All right, so guys, this is the third option for Q1 on our practice right number 4, and it's all about administrative complexes or spaces. What you are given is the palaces of Westminster, and we see a view of the palaces from the Thames with that Victoria Tower, the Elizabeth Tower, the tower over the central lobby, which is the image that you have here at the bottom from the interior. You basically are reminded that the House of Lords is over here, or I'm reminding you. The House of Lords and the Queen sit over here. The House of Commons is over here. They're unified as kind of like a symbol of what the government is when all the working pieces and parts are put together. It was built when a fire burned down the original structure. Some construction work was being done. An ember got loose from the burning of the materials, and ultimately it caught fire to the rest of the palace. The only thing that survives is at the back, Westminster Hall, which is still used today for formal events and occasions. But the idea basically is this represents an ideology about British government, right? Even the way it's designed and decorated, you're going to see that this was like what 36 when the fire happened. About mid-century, we get the complex completed. But it looks like it comes from a much earlier time period than the 19th century. This is neo-Gothic. It is perpendicular Gothic because of the way that it doesn't establish height as the goal, but linearity across a horizontal plane. This is something that's pretty iconic to British Gothic that you don't see on the continent, where the cathedrals, the French are building, go way, way up and high. What we get here is kind of a connection between the building and the land, and only occasionally do you see towers there. So inside you see pointed arches, you see panel tracery, you see decorations in a tile on the floor. There are statues and niches, very much like what you would see on a Gothic cathedral. So it seems to be kind of calling up an earlier British spirit that is identifiably British and not European, French, or Italian, right? So this central lobby, guys, is the chamber that's right under that Gothic spire. It's a rather modern invention in that it allows air to circulate throughout the complex. So I think it's funny, no pun intended. A lot of hot air goes through some of those spaces as people kind of see each other in either chamber. All right, so if you're looking for a model of parliamentary, government with a monarchical parliamentary approach, this is it. I mean, this is like the building looks like what it does. Okay, so this is the question, and we're getting into this. I went ahead and marked it up while we were waiting on that other video to load. So let me read the entire question, and we will. I'll try to explain what my animations are here. Okay. All right, so inching closer. Focus a little bit. There's a little bit better. Okay. Administrative complexes are often designed to represent the distinct cultural and/or political ideals of their patrons through intentional spatial design and thoughtful decorative details. All right away, I'm thinking about, okay, this is going to be about how the space is arranged and then how it's decorated. So I've got the theme in my mind about these administrative spaces. The images shown are multiple views of the same administrative complex. Select and identify another administrative complex. While I'm here, we don't have to identify on this year's exam, right? We're not going to get any points for that anyway. You will probably just see select, and I probably shouldn't have even highlighted that as a verb. The idea basically is just choose another work and get on with it. So that is not something you have to be worried about a task point there for. Of course, I know why you guys are still probably doing this. It's because every example that you can find on the web or in Barron's starts off with identification, right? But guys, when we closed the campus in 2020, it was like all bets off. We redesigned this question so that you couldn't cheat and get a point by looking at a list of identifications. So that is gone. Everything else is all about doing something with both works. So it shows us how you're gonna put those ideas together. All right. So description: describe the visual characteristics of both the required work shown and your selected work that reflect a specific cultural and/or political ideology. Okay. If I look down here, guys. For Palaces of Westminster, I'm going to say a parliamentary approach to government with a monarch, right? A constitutional monarchy is what that idea or ideology is. At Versailles, it's absolutism. Louis XIV, right? The city of Cusco was mapped out to like be literally a map of the empire that has four quadrants. So even inside the city, people from those four quadrants are expected to live in the city. So it becomes kind of like a mini model or a microcosm of the rest of the empire. And look here, you can talk about the temple, you can talk about the Spanish colonial convent. I wouldn't do that. I would focus maybe on the walls at Sacsayhuaman, knowing that the Incas never used the wheel. They did not use beasts of burden for building stuff. All of this was done by hand. And you've got some really fine stonework in the Coricancha we'll talk about. You have also the Apadana of Darius and Xerxes. I think we wrote about this that year. This would be about imperialism almost, right? An empire where you have tributaries. I think there were 22, 24 different nations that were blended into the Persian Empire at that time. This was to mark the center of the empire and the place where people would all come to pay tribute. So you've got different kinds of political models there: empire, absolutist. And then, of course, with the Palace of Westminster, you've got constitutional monarchy. Okay, so moving ahead, the visual characteristics, you could talk about any number of things: the sun radiating off of this guy's bedroom, the carving up of the empire for the city of Cuzco. You could talk about the processional ramps up to the gate and then up to more ramps that lead you to the audience hall, all decorated basically with images of people who would be coming from everywhere holding hands like they're all part of one empire. So that would get both of those points done. Explain one similarity using specific visual evidence and how the spatial arrangement of the required administrative complex shown and in your selected complex reflects the intended message that patrons wish to communicate. All right, spatial arrangement, I always immediately think of like traffic flow, right? Or where people are supposed to go, or where people are supposed to look. And the spaces should be arranged in a way that I can tell specifically what the message is that the patron or the patrons wish to communicate. So obviously, if I look back at my picture, I've kind of already talked about the fact that we have two chambers on either side of a tall central hall. We have a Victoria Tower that marks the royal entrance, right? And basically shows us that there's going to be a monarch, a House of Lords, and a House of Commons, and they are unified in that space. When you look at the Palace of Versailles, everything radiates off of the chateau in the middle, with the levee ceremony kind of providing the focus, and the coucher, where you basically have the king waking up as a model of being the center of the universe with the sun, basically him representing himself as Apollo. Everything in the city kind of like radiates out from avenues. Everything in the gardens goes all the way back to the canals. The spatial arrangement is such that he is at the center of the empire, and you understand that phrase, "Lestat c'est moi," I am the state, based on how that's designed. Cuzco, I've already talked about. It carves up the nations into four, unifies them at the center where Cuzco is located. Coricancha, if you wanted to talk about it, is literally like a neural network or the center of a network of several radius lines, conch lines that reach out to the different temples across the empire. So everything about the city of Cuzco is saying that I am the middle, I am the center of the empire. Look at how I'm designed, right? The audience hall of Apadana. It's very different than, say, something like the Parthenon, where you can all walk up from every different angle you want to. It has a gate. You're supposed to come up one way. You only get so far into the complex, the public Apadana or chamber hall, where you get to make an audience. Your process is guarded all the way through, and it's very, very secretive and special. So it seems to say that perhaps even the emperors were divine and special, because you see them in what looks like a temple or a god's house, right? And it is massively large, but still your access is guided through the complex. So I think we have enough on spatial relationships to figure out how to answer that question. A difference in the decoration of these two spaces. Explain one difference in the decorative details of the two spaces that serves to support the distinct ideology of a specific culture and or specific patron. So we can talk culturally, we can talk about a patron. We're going to use visual evidence to do it. All right, decoration. When you think about the decorations at the Palace of Westminster, it's all Gothic, right? I see spires and I see finials and surface decoration on top of the actual modern structure. Inside the lobby, I see pointed arches. They're not actually doing the job of lifting anything, guys. This is all surface ornamentation. You remember they talked about the Palace of Westminster as being like a modern building with a Gothic skin or veneer. So it is definitely pure revival and surface ornamentation like you expect from the Gothic era. The Palace of, so specifically, stone sculptures around every door, right? Decoration on the surfaces of the floor and the surfaces of the ceiling where I see some mosaic sticking out. Out here, we've got literally towers that are capped by spires. We have little turrets. We have Gothic tracery. Can you see that tower right there is? It's got lots of little supports on the outside of it, like little mini buttresses, but they're not needed for it to stand up using the metal that's on the inside of the building. So that's all decoration. It's hard to see in color. This is Bath limestone. It comes from the city of Bath. And it was seen as more iconically British at the time instead of using more luxe materials like, marble or something like that. That wasn't British. That was European or Italian. So you don't see lots of gold. You don't see lots of access things that are basically being highlighted here, except when you get inside the central lobby where things are ornamented a little bit more heavily. For the Palace of Versailles, good Lord, there's gold on everything. Okay, white and gold are the colors there, and it shows you, and it's the statues that you see or the stucco that you see in every room. If you think of the Hall of Mirrors, it is surface ornamentation that's designed to delight, even though the exterior of the structure is all about conformity and order and supporting the monarch. The decoration of the city, you have to talk about the way the stones are put together. The decoration of the city is based on intricate stonework. The Cori Concha features double jamb doors where the royals are supposed to enter that space. And back in the day, it was covered in gold. So it would shine and reflect the sun's light. And the god of the Inca, remember, his name is Inti. He's the god of the sun. So that symbolism ties the city of Cusco through its patron to what the main religion is. The walls at Sacsayhuaman they're made of stones that are so huge. It's a symbol of the power of the emperor to put people to work doing that. So everything about the city of Cusco talks about the patron's power and authority, being a supreme ruler. The audience hall at Xerxes Apadana, you could say the double-headed bull capitals are symbol of the strength of Darius and then his successor Xerxes. You could say the size of the space with its 100-foot tall columns is meant to dwarf you and overwhelm you. You could say the decoration of the ramps and the access points with those processions of people bearing gifts peacefully coming to venerate the emperor would be perfect for figuring out decorative details that really talk about the patron. How and why? This is where it gets a little dicey, guys. This is pretty rich and complex. You're supposed to say how and why does the specific siting and or location of these administrative complexes serve to support the political or cultural aims of the patrons differently? Whoa, that's sneaky. I mean, normally we're looking for that at the beginning, and it popped in there at the end. So we know it's a difference. We know we've got how it's a difference and why it's a difference. And we got to talk about siting and location, how that serves. This is like super, super thick and hardy there. So I've got points all over this thing. I think based on past experience, you would get a point for answering how, you'd get a point for answering why, and then your evidence, even though you're talking about two works, would be 1 point spread across those two works for each of how and why. It's a little bit easier for you to see if you look at my drawing, okay? Some of you are probably surprised we don't have one pyramid at the bottom. We have two, okay? Here's my description with visual evidence that supports a specific ideology from both the required work and your selected work. Here is how spatial arrangement or spaces are designed. to basically support those ideas, right? Both of them doing it similarly. Decorations, we got to be a little bit different here and choose some things that are a little bit more spread apart. But how those places are decorated will help us understand the ideology there. All right, here's my how pyramid. Here's my why pyramid. I think if you get a how and why question, you need to look at that very carefully. We want evidence from both works to answer that question. It's still three parts, right? Why is also three parts because we have to have evidence from one and the other as we answer the question why. Now, somebody higher than me in this pay grade situation would have to figure out where the points would go, but I think you would have a 2-point challenge for each of your evidence points. And I think people would forget to talk about those questions thinking that their evidence answered the question, right? It's obvious. No, you have a question to answer and evidence to supply. So I'm hoping that you don't get one that has multiple pyramids all over the place, but at least we know what to do if we see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so those would be lots of points on the table. As long as you're attacking the question and answering all parts of the question, guys, the points are going to fall on top of your response wherever College Board decides to put them. So I don't want you stressing out if you mapped out the points. What I'd rather you focus on is, did you answer all parts of the question? Okay. Some of you might have mapped this out and gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Don't freak out. It's fine. That means you're answering all the parts of the question, right? Some of you might have seen these as two things and these as two things. That is totally okay because you got to have, evidence from those two things to get that 1 point to fall right. So maybe next year, instead of teaching all about points, I'm going to teach you answer all parts of the question. And I think if you can kind of make that clear to yourself, answer all parts of the question, then we're going to get all the points that are out there, regardless of how many they are. Okay? Do that today, and I think you'll do much better on this exam.